Today we're comparing the iPhone 14 Pro to the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Hey everyone, it's Andrew and welcome back to the channel. In the video we'll compare specs, features, and details you may have missed. I'll also talk about why it might be your year to switch to the Pro Max size. And at the end of the video we'll crown one of these flagships as the winner. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe to the channel. I have a ton of Apple content coming out and you're not going to want to miss a single video. Let's begin. And the first thing we're going to touch on is the size and weight of the devices. The 14 Pro, obviously being smaller than the 15 Pro Max, is a height of 5.81 inches, a width of 2.81 inches, and a depth of 0.31 inches. As for the 15 Pro Max, the height is 6.29 inches, a width of 3.02 inches, and a depth of 0.32 inches. But this is where it gets interesting. The weight of the iPhone 14 Pro is 7.27 ounces, and the weight of the 15 Pro Max is 7.81 ounces, which is crazy because the 15 Pro Max is so much bigger. And I would argue if you are thinking about transitioning to that bigger size, this might be the year to switch because it's never been so close in weight. For perspective, the 14 Pro Max weighs 8.46 ounces, so they shaved off quite a bit on the 15 Pro Max due to the titanium. Now let's get into the frames, and the frame on the 14 Pro is a really elegant stainless steel frame, and on the 15 Pro Max you get a aerospace grade titanium frame. In tests, it has shown that the 14 Pro's stainless steel is probably a more durable option. Both phones have a power button, volume up and down, and nearly identical camera bumps. What's different on the 15 Pro Max is the action button, and on the charging side, you get a USB-C port on the 15 Pro Max and a lightning port on the 14 Pro. And just from a comfort perspective, the 15 Pro Max feels more comfortable in hand due to the new contoured edges that are found with the natural titanium frame. It's slightly curved and it just feels great in hand, as opposed to the 14 Pro being a little bit more sharp and kind of getting a little bit of fatigue when holding it for long periods of time. The back of the phones also use the same textured matte glass back. Something that is really small, but you can't overlook it, is how thin the bezels are this year on the 15 Pro Max. And for me, it was really noticeable when looking at this 6.7 inch display that the 15 Pro Max has. Other than the bezels, the displays are pretty much identical. The 14 Pro and the 15 Pro Max have a Super Retina XDR display with Pro Motion technology, or as many people call it, 120 Hz refresh rate. And on the front screen, you also get ceramic shield, which apparently is the toughest glass on any smartphone. Most of the features are actually the same, the big ones being dynamic island, an always-on display, emergency SOS via satellite, crash detection, and roadside assistance via satellite. Both are MagSafe compatible. You get water resistance up to a depth 6 meters for 30 minutes. It's 5G enabled. You get Face ID, and peak brightness outdoors is 2000 nits. And to be honest, that's pretty much it for notable features. Outside of the action button, which is really cool and can be customized depending on what you want to set your action to. So I haven't played around with this too much. Right now, I just have it set to silent mode. To be honest, I don't really miss the mute switch, but to me, I haven't used the action button as much as I thought I would over the last few weeks. Also, for storage, the starting storage for the 14 Pro is 128 gigabytes, going all the way up to 1 terabyte, and the 15 Pro Max starts at 256 gigabytes all the way up to 1 terabyte. Now, for the chip, there are some internal changes when it comes to the 15 Pro Max, and what you get is the A17 Pro chip. The A17 Pro chip supports a 6-core CPU, a 6-core GPU, and a 16-core neural engine. Really, the only difference looking at the spec sheet when it comes to the chip is last year it was a 5-core GPU and the A16 chip. Now, I'm not really one that cares too much about benchmarks, and I'm not crazy at gaming or anything like that, so performance-wise, I haven't noticed much of a difference. They both feel about the same in terms of smoothness, iOS 17, and haptics. Third-party apps are fine, like Instagram and X, and the 15 Pro Max has just been really good, and especially good because of the battery life. Which, let's talk about battery life. Based on what Apple says, for the 14 Pro, you get 23 hours of video playback. I don't know about that. The 14 Pro for me was the worst battery experience I had on any device. At the time when I used it, I was getting a little over 4 hours of screen active time, which just isn't really good, and about 1 hour to 2 hours of screen off time. Man, I just think for a Pro device, it should have been a lot better. And for the 15 Pro Max, my experience has been really good. I wouldn't say it's been amazing, but even on days where I use it pretty heavily, I end the day around 8 or 9 p.m. Even right now, like I used it quite a bit today, and it's at 30% battery life, and it's 7 p.m. So I'll easily get through the rest of the day with this phone. And I haven't put it on the charger at all today. So if you have a Pro device, maybe consider getting a Pro Max this year because of the battery. It's much better. Another big change is USB-C. And at first glance, it just seems like a new port that you plug in a new charger. But that's just the surface. When you go into it, it actually is pretty crazy with what you can do with USB-C. I can use my 15 Pro Max to charge other Apple devices. I can connect it to my studio display and use it as a computer. You can connect keyboards, mouses. It's pretty insane, and there's a ton of stuff you can do with it. Now, the cameras for both phones are fantastic. I actually really enjoyed using the 14 Pro a lot last year to take a ton of gorgeous pictures. With the 14 Pro, you get a Pro camera system with a 48 megapixel main lens, an ultra-wide lens, and a telephoto lens. Now, for optical zoom, you get 0.5x, 1x, 2x, and 3x optical zoom. Very nice, and I really liked using 3x optical zoom a lot. Like I said, you get super high quality photos with the 14 Pro. And the 15 Pro really isn't like a crazy step up, but there's some little things that the 15 Pro Max just does better. For the 15 Pro Max, the camera has been upgraded to take 48 megapixel photos and 24 megapixel photos. You also get the option to do next-gen portraits with depth and focus controls. And optical zoom goes all the way up to 5x, with zoom itself going all the way up to 25x, which is pretty cool. The 5x optical zoom is exclusive to the 15 Pro Max, and you also get different focal lengths to choose from in the settings. Like I said, both phones are great, and I had no issues with taking photos on either of these phones. But one thing a lot of people complained about was the HDR, and it's actually been updated to Smart HDR5, which seems to have corrected a lot of issues that people were having. For video recording, it's leveled up quite a bit for people that would say they are professionals. And honestly, it really is starting to look like a pro level camera. For years now on iPhone, you can record in 4K 60 FPS. But now you can record in 4K ProRes at 60 FPS. For both of these, you need an external SSD to output the files while recording. You can also record in log. The front-facing camera stays the same at 12 megapixels, but it does adapt the Smart HDR5. Switching from the 14 Pro to the 15 Pro Max has given me three things that are really important. I have a better camera, which not only for taking pictures, but if I do want to go more into pro video recording, I can just because of YouTube. Number two, it's also given me a much better battery experience. I get all the way through the day and I'm never worried about having to charge my phone in the middle of the day or throwing on the MagSafe battery pack. And number one, I was worried about the size, but the 6.7-inch display is incredible. The bezels are great, and the phone is so comfortable and light that I don't even really notice that there's much of a difference between this and the 14 Pro. Now, things like the action button or USB-C might not really be fully worth the upgrade, so you're really going to have to see what's important for you and make your decision. So the obvious choice if you're selecting between the 14 Pro or the 15 Pro Max is the 15 Pro Max. And if you have a later gen device, like you're coming from a 12 Pro Max, an iPhone 11, or even later, then I would definitely recommend getting the 15 Pro Max. Shoot, if you don't like the big size, you're just gonna miss out on camera stuff, get the 15 Pro. Those are both fantastic devices, and I think they're better than the 14 Pro. Now, if you have the 14 Pro, should you upgrade? And I actually don't think you should. I think we're at this time where it's not quite enough features to upgrade every year. Maybe hold off until next year. For me personally, I love the 15 Pro Max, but I'm not like everyone, and I like updating my devices every year. But not always. I didn't get the Apple Watch Ultra 2 because I didn't think it was worth it. And to be honest, it might not be worth it for you to upgrade. And I don't want to steer you the wrong way and kind of influence you to upgrade or feel FOMO, when really for me the biggest thing is battery, and I'm happy, but maybe you're having great battery on your 14 Pro. So just keep that in mind. And that's the 15 Pro Max versus the 14 Pro. We covered a lot of details, we gave a clear winner, and honestly, it's up to you now whether you upgrade or not. I do plan to do more comparison videos. I have a 13 Pro lined up as well as an iPhone 11, which will be really interesting, so make sure to sub for that. Let me know in the comments below which phone you think is better, the 15 Pro Max or the 14 Pro, or whatever iPhone or phone you think is better, because I know there might be some S23 Ultra fans in there. And as always guys, thanks for watching, God bless, and I will see you on the next video.